Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Eating at a Meeting. And up here in the upper left-hand corner, I'm so excited to see you from my home office this week. And I'm excited to bring you this conversation today about, and I've gathered some meeting planners here, to share food and beverage ordering tips for better guest experiences and budgets. And because I've come off two events this summer, and I really want to talk about how we can do that. And so I'm very excited to bring to you today in this conversation is Julie Wong. She's the president and owner of the Event Concierge. Below her is Shannon Ryan, who works at the National Comprehensive Cancer Network, and Janet Hoppenstein, who is an account director with SEI Meetings and Incentives. Welcome to the show, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
So on the description for the show, food and beverage is rarely just a line item. It's like 500 line items if you take into consideration everything that we order on food and beverage. And I don't think people take that, really think about it, right? So I really want to talk about how food and beverage comes into play in the events that you plan. And before we get into that, I would love you to explain to the audience what kind of events you do plan. So let's start with you, Julie.
Okay. So we run all types of events. So mostly focused on the corporate side. We do plan some associations, and then mostly just focused on meetings of various sizes. I would say our largest client event is a conference of about 1,000 people.
Okay.
But on average, we probably plan mostly meetings for anywhere between 50 to about 250 people.
Okay, perfect. Shannon?
Hi, I'm similar. I work for a cancer association, and we also run the gamut. Our biggest conference is about 1,600. That's our annual conference. But for the most part, our events are anywhere between 30 and 300 people.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Janet?
So we do a combination of meetings and incentives at SEI. My clients are primarily on the incentive side. I have a couple of smaller meetings that are like 100, 150 people. And then my incentives, one smaller one, but then primarily larger ones. For instance, 2 consecutive groups of 800 people each. So
wow.
So that really, so that's good because it seems like we all have kind of different sizes we're working with on food and beverage, and that can kind of make for more.
Exactly. Yeah. And the events that I worked on this summer, one was 800 and one was 1,400. So it varies in that. And then there's lots of meetings inside of those, right?
Yes.
So you're not necessarily feeding that many people all at one time.
Exactly.
So, okay, food and beverage. It's probably our number one line item, expense-wise. So what are your key priorities when you're ordering food and beverage for your events?
For me, it's health and inclusivity. I think we've all seen a huge rise in allergies and food preferences. And I think that duty of care, obviously, is our number one priority as a meeting planner. So keeping our attendees safe and healthy is my number one priority. And that takes a lot of work from the beginning, from building your registration site till, making sure you're talking with the people who are letting you know that you have allergies and then communicating it effectively to the caterers. So for me, that is the number one priority. And after that, it's budget. I mean, we've all seen a huge rise in costs, and now we're thinking about tariffs and how that's going to look for the price of coffee beans. And we already know that coffee is astronomical to begin with. So that's anxiety provoking as we go into our budgeting process this year.
Yeah, exactly. What about you, Janet and Julie?
So my first is probably variety, because for me that encompasses what Shannon said about, health and food sensitivities or food preferences. With the groups that I have right now, a lot of them are Southern and they still are big meat and potatoes, but then but then they'll have spouses or guests that are more healthy. So it's definitely big variety. I am a freak about food labeling and both
Okay.
for, allergies and preferences. So people know, especially, I mean, I don't need them to label a bowl of bananas. We know what a banana is, but anything that has multiple ingredients. I'm also really big on doing deconstructed things, whether it's, with everything from salads to pretty much anything that can be deconstructed, have it deconstructed. So if you are a vegan, you can put together your salad with only the vegetables and that there's a non-dairy dressing. If you're gluten-free, we've got, and there's a sandwich bar, then obviously there'll be gluten-free bread and so forth. So I really focus on variety. So the people that really like to eat the stuff that's bad for you can, and those that need or want more healthy, or a combination thereof. I mean, I'm one of those combination thereof people myself. I'll be like, I'm going to do these mashed potatoes, but then I'll do the grilled fish. So, so that's kind of how I look at it.
No, I like that. Yeah. Yeah. Julie, what about you?
Very similar. There's how you prioritize is really tough. I feel like I take the approach of the budget, the health conscious, balance, experience, given the location, the type of hotel, and even the type of event it is. If it's a meeting, are they making sure it's not carb heavy? Timing wise, if we're on a tight agenda and lunch needs to be a short time, how much variety are we offering, that type of stuff. Making sure that it's a balanced menu. And if you're a multi-day, making sure that the guests don't get bored or it looks very repetitive. Trying to lay out a menu that almost makes sense, but also gives them a variety, gives them a taste of, if they're traveling, kind of that local taste, but also from a operational standpoint, can the venue or caterer produce what we're looking for at a top notch, just to give them, again, that experience, but then again, taking care of all those other factors such as budget and such as the health.
One other thing regarding the health, when people put on their on their registration gluten-free or some other anymore, I like to check in with people, or if they put kosher, I'll check in with them personally, because I really want to know, if you didn't put down celiac, but you put gluten-free, is there something dangerous, or is it more of a preference? If you're kosher, are you kosher style, or do I really need to bring in food from a kosher caterer for you that's sealed with plastic utensils, etc.? So I like to drill down when people put their preferences now, because if it's just, I don't eat gluten because I don't like it. I mean, it's good to know you're really dealing with.
Yeah. We can even drill down as far as preference versus a requirement.
Yeah.
But yes, very similar, meeting up with the guests. We've even gone as far as, I have one client where the executive has a food allergy to nickel, and it was a challenge for us to just try and coordinate what was acceptable for her and what was safe, that we've gotten to the point where as soon as she gets to the hotel or the venue, we set up a meeting with the chef. And that has caused so much relief from a planning side and from a staffing side as well, knowing that she has talked to the culinary team, and that we can pinpoint exactly what is safe, and then best practices from the service staff on. So I have learned from that experience that someone that's really high allergy or very sensitive is maybe setting up a meeting with the culinary team.
Yeah. Well, and just kind of going back to all of your answers on some of those things of when somebody thinks about planning a meeting, I don't think that they think about all of those different details, right? And you're saying the dietary preferences, and then the labeling, and then meeting with the chef, and hey, we have to get food from an outside caterer for this person who eats kosher or halal, and then the variety of that, right? And how do we, if you the event I just did was 4 days, and we have three different lunches and dinners and receptions. It's not like just going to the same restaurant every single night, right? We're challenged with making sure that the food and beverage meets an expectation, that it's not the same, that it provides for everybody's different needs.
And I think that's I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's so nice when, without you even having to say, hey, chef, with these vegans, can you please not just do a plate of steamed vegetables? And and they come up with really creative, lovely
Mhm.
options. I did a small awards event not too long ago, and it was a lovely plated meal, and everybody was getting all this amazing food, and we had a vegan person, and the chef did this vegetarian Mediterranean extravaganza for them that had falafel and different dips, different Mediterranean dips, and all kinds of fun, awesome things, and marinated vegetables. And they were so excited. And there were people at the table going, "So you're vegetarian, vegan?" And
Yeah.
brought, and then and freshly baked pita with it. And so, when chefs do that without you even having to prompt, when they come to you and say, "Hey, by the way, this is what I'm going to do for your vegan. Are you good with it?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, yes, I'm good with it."
Yeah.
So that's always nice, because and that also says something to me about the culinary team in general at a property, when they want to make sure everybody has a great experience.
Right. Well, and I just had one where for all of the special meals, they made a plate of tofu. And I'm like, no, and I'm like, why would you do that? Right? No, thank you. So how do you, I want to go back to Shannon. I think you mentioned it first, was the registration. It goes back to registration and asking these questions. And I think the reports that we get. So how do you all ask the questions of your attendees to get the right reports in? And I'm like, I'm not in a position where I am actually designing the registration sites. So I'm listening to the three of you. You are designing those registration sites so that you have the ability to ask the right questions. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's super important to break it down. I think, like Julie said, between preferences and actual allergies. So our first question is, do you have any allergies? And we list out all the most common allergies. I think it's the top 9 plus several more. And then we leave an open-ended other where people can fill that in. And then if you have answered any of that, then we ask, what will happen to you? Are you going to have a medical emergency if you accidentally have something? And is it by touch? Is it inhalation? What is it? So that we have all that information. And then we ask, do you have dietary preferences? Gluten-free, vegetarian, vegan, kosher, halal. It's so important to get that information up front, because for those people who are severely allergic, you need to know who they are. I want to have a conversation with them prior to the event. I'm going to email them. I want it in writing that I've emailed them, that I know what it is, that that the hotel, the chef has all that information. And then when I'm on site, I'm going to check in with chef and the banquet captains, identify these people, make sure that if they want to have a meeting with them, they have that opportunity. But I need my attendee to know that I do understand what's going to happen, what's at stake, and I take it seriously.
Awesome. Julie and Janet, do you create your registration system any differently?
So I'm very similar in the fact that I don't always write out. We sometimes will work with our partners and our clients to kind of review the questions on the registration. Very similar to Shannon, we ask the questions of, your top allergies and then other, and allow them. But which I love that idea, is drilling it down even further. But we do follow up with the guests in advance, just making sure if there's any specialty requests or if there's any more details that we need to find out in the planning process, and then follow up with on-site. And then at registration, we try and kind of call out the guests with any dietary needs, just to point out, we've acknowledged your dietary need on your registration. Is there any updates or changes or anything that we need to take care of? That way they know we've acknowledged and that the culinary team's been made aware of their request.
And I always make sure it's on all the BEOs. If it's not, if they haven't carried it over from my specs to the BEO, I send it back and say it needs to be on the BEO.
Agreed. Shannon, I like what you're doing. I definitely ask about dietary restrictions, but in the registration, I haven't asked for preference versus true, life-threatening allergy. I have a comment section, and usually they'll say, but not always. So that's a great best practice. I just hadn't.
Yeah.
I think I got that from Tracy.
I was going to say, that's the way I teach it. Yep.
So
I didn't want to pipe in there, but yeah, I can send that to you, Janet.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean,
Yeah.
the large incentives that we do, that group, I mean, out of literally 800 per group, so 1,600 people, we have such a small percentage. I mean,
which is
I don't know if
amazing.
it's just there's very little food allergies in those southern states, but it's amazing how few. But still, so I guess so we haven't done the preference versus allergy, and a lot of them are repeat winners, and we kind of know them. So for new meetings, especially, I think that's a great best practice. I'll think of it later. There's a thought that I had that went out of my head, so I'm gonna.
No, that's okay. That happens to me all the time. And I think it is important to ask those questions, because I actually, one of the events I recently did, and I asked that question. I'm like, you said you have a nut allergy. Is it consumption? Is it touch? Is it inhalation?
Yeah.
And a couple of people were like, I can't be in the room with it. So, I made the decision to make that event completely nut free. And I have actually done that for the last 3 different events, not same client, 3 different events because of that. And they're like, wow. And I tell them, I'm like, the venue itself is not nut free, right? But our events, the food that we're serving is going to be nut free. So you have no,
contamination.
Right, exactly. And you have no worry, but it doesn't mean that Shannon didn't eat peanuts in her room, right? So I can't, and then come down to the space. So you can't control all of that, but at least your menus could be free of those allergens.
Well, and I never had seen until my now husband, who was my fiance when this happened a few months ago, but he apparently a restaurant used peanut oil in anyway, he was in anaphylactic shock. I'd never seen anybody in anaphylactic shock before. And he didn't have an EpiPen, and so it was hospital, and he almost died and whatever. So it's, I think, and I think we all are good about taking it very seriously. And that's why also you want to know if it's just a preference, because I want to really make sure that the people that could die or have a severe reaction really are taken care of, and that the others are taken care of as well for their preferences. But there's obviously a difference there.
Right.
And I think that's where my stress kind of comes in when executing the meeting is we understand, and maybe the management team understands the urgency of it, especially now in today's planning. It's service staff that I really stress about, as far as do they understand the urgency of the food, of the allergies. That's where I'm constantly, I feel like we're in communication and just double checking or managing the catering staff and banquet staff, just to make sure that they realize. And I try and really just be focused on who are the people in the room that have the allergies. Sometimes you've got such a large group, you can't keep a tab on everybody, but just making sure that the service staff who's taking care of those people really know, because I have found that over the years that sometimes I don't think they take it as seriously as, we're trying to deliver that. So
right. Yeah. And it comes down to that training or lack of training, that's provided to them, because a lot of them are on hourly employees. All right. I want to jump back, step away a little bit from dietary restrictions, but talk about budgeting, right? How do you design your budgets based on your events? And do you have, are you using the printed menus from the hotel, or are you saying, hey, I've got this budget. This is what I can spend per event, or, is there a formula for it, or is it different for everyone?
For me, it depends on the property, because in the venue, because you have some properties who are very food forward and they're really excited and they have a great banquet captain or team. They have a great culinary team, and they're excited to work with you and they're collaborative. And then you have others that they just put out their menu and that's that. And so when I have a really collaborative group that I'm working with, I love to just give them my budget. I love to give them my demographics. I think if you have data about your event, your attendees, you can really nail it and give them a great experience. So, I've got 80% women and they're millennials, and 30% of them are vegetarian. Go to town. Wow. You can really get some fantastic menus, but then you have a lot of places where seems like the best bet is just going off the menu because somebody put time into it and then they don't want to think about it ever again. They don't want to design.
Right.
So for me, it really is just venue dependent, but I do love working with catering teams who are into food. And you would think that most of them would be, but I've really worked with some that I don't think they like food at all. And I'm like, why are you giving me this menu? This is terrible. And then I try to rewrite it. And I'm writing menus. Like, can you do this? Can you do this? So I think it's dependent.
Yeah.
I tend to, especially if the hotel does have, to your point, a good culinary team, I take the banquet menus as a jumping off point when they're creative. And, I rarely do not customize, but sometimes I'll like some of the stuff that they've already got kind of packaged up, and then I'll say, okay, but I really want this from this and this from this. And oh, by the way, can you add this or take this away? And for meetings, one thing that I started doing years ago, which I think is helpful for budget and also so there's not as much food wastage, is if you do a lunch menu that has a dessert as part of it, I say take the dessert off, and it usually just brings it down like $3 per person. But if it's a big conference, $3 per person for several lunches in a row can save some money, because then they're usually too full to eat the dessert anyway. It mostly gets wasted, and then I put something sweet on the afternoon break, and so it's like then they get there to feel like, well, we didn't have dessert. Hey, there's something sweet on the break. And
or you can just take that dessert and put it on your PM break.
Right.
You don't have to hold it.
Yeah.
If they don't charge you for that.
Yes, some will charge you, which is bonkers.
But usually I don't love
setup time.
Right.
Yeah. I agree, but I typically want to do something different, a little more creative than what they've got as a dessert for the lunch. So then I still want to create something different for the PM break. But yes, that's always an option as well, what you're saying.
Yeah.
I've also taken, sometimes like a buffet will have 3 different salads, and I'll say, can we hold one of those salads to the PM break? Because my groups are primarily pretty healthy, and they don't really hit the desserts as much as probably a lot of groups. So taking a salad and just saying, can we repurpose that somehow for another break?
That's a good idea.
That's been a good budget saver for me.
Okay. I like that idea. Julie, what about you?
It really does depend on the property. I love, having a food and beverage background, love looking at menus, seeing if we can tweak some things or move some things around. I sometimes for lunch menus, we'll look at what they are offering for dinner and seeing if maybe if it's more creative or cost effective, can we offer that on a smaller size? I try and look at items where the majority can have them, try and stay away from like the cream based items or the spicy items or the peppery items or things that may bring up a food allergy to the majority of people or preferences. And so sometimes I do like to tweak. Sometimes it's just given how much time we have when it comes to the planning. And but yeah, if there's an opportunity to let the culinary team get creative or make some changes, especially when you've got a multi-day, it does help to see if they can come up with something a little bit special, or if there are maybe if we're a smaller meeting group and there's another group that's in-house, maybe piggyback on what they're doing for cost effectiveness and purchasing power. So we've suggested that as well to the team.
Well, and there's some hotels, actually the last 2 I've done this summer, they have the menu of the day, right? Yeah. So it's Monday, it's this, Tuesday, it's this. And so it's kind of that doing the same thing of what you just said is what's the other group doing, as long as they're doing that. Because I also like the idea too of saving the budget so that the hotel is buying in bulk and not buying and wasting staff to create an entirely different menu. So, but some of them are hard, and Shannon, it's like pulling teeth with some chefs, to get them to talk to you.
Well, yeah.
Or getting past the CSM to talk to them.
Right. Yes, it's like they gatekeep the chefs a lot of times. So I feel like, planning meetings are so incredibly important, but a lot of budgets are cutting, our planning meetings. But, getting on site and 3 to 6 to 8 months before an event and really sussing this out will help make such a more impactful experience for our attendees. But unfortunately, I think a lot of our C-suites aren't seeing that. That's kind of the first thing to go, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I went on one, oh gosh, this is probably 2021, and it was a convention center, and the chef showed up and he never got closer than 5 feet from the table and from us, and then kept backing up. But I'm like, why are you doing this job? I'm like, just trying to assess him and get his input on catering menus. But I think he's one of those guys that's like, doesn't want to be here.
And I feel like that it trickles down to the staff too, because I just did our annual conference in March was such a breath of fresh air, where even the chef was so joyful about the menu and collaborating with the catering manager that I worked with, who was probably the best catering manager I've ever worked with in my entire life, 23 years. But even the servers were so excited, the banquet staff, like, these cucumbers came from a little farm 2 miles away.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And, the banquet captains, when your servers are excited about that, you can really tell that the property is super invested in the product that they're putting out, and they want people to be as excited. And
what property? Give them a shout out.
Yeah, it was the Creve Royale in Orlando.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
I've never used them. They've been in an RFP process, but that's very good to know.
That's great to know.
Absolutely.
We're there in 2027, so that's great to know.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, it's interesting too that you say that, because we also all belong to some Facebook groups for meeting planners, National Meeting Planners Group, and SPIN, and when we all put a question out there, I'm like, there is somebody in each one of those groups that knows somebody at that group, or has worked at that property, or doesn't work at that property. And I think it's to having that experience is really good, and we need to showcase those properties that we love, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That there are more and more collaborative chefs and accessible chefs, as opposed to the opposite. I used to run into roadblocks more when I would say, it's one of my requirements on my planning visit to meet with the chef. Well, the CSM knows it. No. The CSM is not a chef, not inside the chef's brain. And when you sit down with a chef, if they're at all open to having the conversation, you end up getting cool things out of it, just because, and food and beverage is one of my most creative areas. And so I feel like I have some creative ideas. And then, when you have the chef who knows how to create the things that I'm thinking in my brain, and then comes up with even more stuff, but you can't do that with CSM regardless of how well versed she or he is about the hotel. But I'm finding it trending in the right direction, at least in my experience.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. I had a really good visit, or really good chef at the JW Marriott Austin. He was fantastic to work with, accommodated a halal person 2 days before the event. And that guy is like, I need my picture with this chef, because he helped me eat for 3 days, and from India, and he was from India. So it was a really, and I loved it. And so it's a breath of fresh air for sure. Okay, so you mentioned RFPs, and I want to go back to that. So what do you put in your RFPs as it relates to food and beverage? Do you put your food and beverage history, just the spend, the dietary needs? Do you say, hey, I need to meet with the chef? What kind of questions do you put in your RFPs?
I put pretty much our schedule of events, and let them know, which days we're doing breakfast, and is it plated, or is it buffet, or and is it a continental? I let them know what kind of lunches, how many special events, how many committee meetings, things like that. And I don't typically give our spend unless asked point blank, but I have a lot of documentation and data on that, but it feels tricky. I feel like we're in a very much us against them situation right now when it's coming to contracting and negotiating our events.
Right. Yeah, very similar. In the RFP, that's also tricky, because the request from hoteliers is, trying to cull down the RFP information to, in a step process. So I have over the years have put the agenda, kind of do a high level, but I don't put the spend in there. I don't even go as detailed as far as, whether it's plated or buffet, but I do kind of give an idea of, a meal versus breaks, or if they're on their own,
Okay.
as far as meals. That way it helps determine the food and beverage minimum spend for contracting. It also helps from a staffing level. But because I feel like now we've morphed into a little bit of bare bones information for that, at least that first step of the RFP, just to see if a property is even able to accommodate and interested. I don't put as much details in the food and beverage until we get to the next phase.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. What about you, Janet?
I'm kind of in the same camp as Julie. I'll make sure they know the food functions that we will be having versus when they're off property, and then and sometimes I'll indicate what we did in the past in terms of, hey, this dinner was a plated past 2 years, but we might. So I'll kind of give some indication of what we did in the past, but pretty similar to Julie.
Okay. Do you put any information about sustainability? Let's just jump into sustainability a little bit, as it relates to food and beverage. Do you all donate after your events, try to work with the properties to donate leftover prepared but unserved food to local communities? What are your steps around food waste management?
Yep, I feel like properties have gotten a little bit better about it in recent years. There used to be so much pushback about the liability, and you show them the bill and like, no, you can't really be sued for these things. So but it feels like it's gotten a little bit easier. And in Orlando, I know they, a lot of the properties use second harvest, and that's been really great, seeing how much of our food, leftover food has gone there. I do put that sustainability is important, but I haven't asked for specific data from the hotels because I feel like there's so much greenwashing anyway that I don't know how much I can trust it.
Gotcha. Okay. Right.
So I think it's for us, client preference. We ask, we put it in the RFP. We haven't dealt, a lot of ours, I don't feel like have delved really deep into that. We haven't pushed. A lot of it is what's the hotel or venue willing to do if we want to be socially responsible. But I don't feel like we've taken it to the next level that it potentially could go to.
Okay. All right. Okay. What's one thing? So we've talked about RFPs a little bit, but and you're waiting to that second round. Is there anything in that first round, or even in that first round specifically, or maybe it's the second round of selection of properties that you look for in a banquet, in a proposal from a hotel that would say, hey, I've got, this is something that really intrigues me as it relates to food and beverage? Is there anything? I feel like food and beverage, when it comes back into proposals, like here's our average food, lunch menu and the average price for dinner, et cetera. Not much else is provided around the food and beverage.
Yeah, it always stands out to me when they come back with more than that. When they come back and say, hey, here's the average price, but hey, we're really great at charcuterie boards and we're really great. And they give you some idea of some areas, at least they give you some insight into something. That always stands out. But I always assume I'm going to have to ask a lot of probing questions.
I'm always impressed when I get a proposal and right off the bat, they stick some concessions in about coffee or, a hosted reception or something. It's very far and few between. I mean, you usually have to kind of demand, but I have had in different markets, I've had proposals come back with that right off the bat.
Very cool. Yeah, I don't know. I know one of my clients, we always used to ask for, a reception at the beginning and, and then making sure that the bars are open, knowing what your attendees are going to do after the fact, after your event, can your bar stay open until 2:00 in the morning or whatever? How do they do that? Julie, anything different on that?
No, I think the only thing we would add, or I would say as far as when we get to that next level, is I do tend to ask for everybody's menu in the RFP process so that I can kind of see. And sometimes you can kind of get a glimpse of who might be more food and beverage focused. And then as far as if we know that it's like our top couple choices, that's when I'll have a conversation as far as, I see you've got these standard menus. Can we, if we need to get creative, can we get creative, or can we swap out some things? Or I used to use the line of, I know there's chicken that's served 1,000 different ways. Would your chef be open to, because we're 3 days, we've got a tight budget, we've got to do chicken 2 out of the 3 days. Can we kind of, maybe prepare them a little bit differently? So I think, again, it goes back into building that relationship with your hotel and maybe establishing parameters of what kind of clientele that we're bringing into the property, and seeing willing to work with us on that.
Okay. No, I like, those are some good tips. All right. Shannon, you mentioned coffee, so let's jump into that little nugget of expense. I mean, there's threads in our Facebook groups about how much we're paying for coffee, and, $160 per cup or per gallon, which is on average 12 cups per gallon, right? If you think based on the cup size, plus. So it's like $225 for 1 gallon of coffee and tea, and 1 gallon of tea and 1 gallon of decaf. How have you been successful in negotiating that down? How do you manage your coffee consumption at your events? Those 2 different questions, I guess, in that one.
I've had to play the bad guy and just take coffee away after lunch.
Oh, completely. Okay.
That's the only way that I can do it. I mean, there's always a Starbucks in pretty much every property.
Yeah.
And you hope that somebody's going to sponsor a coffee bar at some point, but just kind of eating the complaints about no coffee after lunch is the best thing that I've been able to do. And we're kind of also really, I see data a lot, but knowing your group and knowing if you have a lot of really heavy tea drinkers in your group, and kind of pulling back on the coffee and decaf and focusing on tea. So one event I have is nurses, and they drink tea and Diet Coke. So I'm going to be really strategic about how I'm going to order that, and letting the hotel know, you don't need nearly as much coffee and decaf, but keep that tea coming and that Diet Coke replenished.
Gotcha.
With the incentives, I don't think coffee comes into play as much as much of a budget factor as with meetings, because the hotels that I'm dealing with at least still include the coffee with the breakfast. So our patterns, we do a robust breakfast every day in different action stations daily, and different, whatever. But coffee's always part of it.
Right.
And the only other time that we really have coffee is on arrival day at the check-in hospitality desk. And so, and again, we kind of have an idea of our percentage of tea drinkers. So I make sure that, that the hot water is commensurate with our consumption.
Right.
But really, so it becomes, it's not as big of an issue.
Gotcha. Yep. That makes sense.
An ad hoc budget concern.
Right. Yeah. Julie, do you have coffee all day long?
I was just thinking of all the answers. We have tried anything and everything, depending on the group. So depending on time of year, location, the group, what the event is, we have nixed decaf on some events completely.
Okay.
I've actually had one hotel, which I loved. For a group of about 150 people, they were willing to do hot tea on consumption.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
I have asked that of any other hotel and they won't do it, but that one was probably one of my favorite, was hot tea on consumption. We have told the hotel that we had a budget of so many gallons, but then still do, or they notify. And I think it's more of a kind of setting the tone of, hey, we're on a limited budget. This is one of my nonprofit association clients. And so we say, hey, we have in our budget, let's say 10 gallons. Please let us know when we get to 7, and we'll decide if we're just going to max it out at the 10, or if it's early enough, we can add, 2 more or 3 more on top of that. Again, depending on when we reach that maximum as far as time of day. And then in our back pocket of our budget, we may actually have like 15 gallons budgeted, just kind of give us that leeway. So I feel like, again, depending on your property and your communication, we've had where hotels say, okay, they're watching it as well. I've had some where a hotel, actually the convention center, was generous enough to let us keep our coffee from breakfast out, because it was included in breakfast, until we went out and then started to add coffee charge on a consumption basis.
I did that in Austin, and I think that because it's sometimes the hotels, it's got it with lunch as well. So like if it's included in your lunch price instead of tea, then that's your way to do that. But yeah.
Remember when coffee used to be like 18 cups a gallon?
Right.
I feel like we need to get smarter about demanding smaller cup sizes.
Oh, I do that.
Yeah.
Do you?
You do.
Yeah. I'll specify that I want 8 ounce, whatever it is. I mean, to make the gallon stretch. Because the thing is, if it's a bigger cup, you know how it goes. They fill their big cup. They waste half the cup. They leave the coffee sitting there. So I just go ahead and specify that they have, for the to-go cups and the China cups, that they be the smaller cups.
That's smart. Yeah. I mean, it will make, because you're right, because half of them do leave their cup. They get up from their meeting, they're talking to Shannon or Janet, and then they walk away and they don't remember their cup. And so it is wasted. I do want to do a call out real quick. I've got Chef Keith from Las Vegas, and Adia from Atlanta, listening to us on Instagram. So hello to the two of you. And Marie was here as well. So hello. To all of you. If you have questions, let us know. Or Chef, if you want to pipe in on any of these conversations, let us know too. What is actually, because we're talking about drinks here, I want to talk about alcohol, because I was also reviewing an alcohol bill the other day. How do you manage the alcohol consumption at your events? Do you do it? I mean, I'm going to say it's going to depend on the amount of people that you have, and whether you do the package deal, like it's $25 per person, and you just pay that thing, or are you doing it on consumption and counting bottle tops and liquor bottles, et cetera?
So I'll go first.
Yeah.
So a lot of that has to do with the group. Because if it's a light drinking group, and then I do the math basically, and if I look at, and then so that's usually based on the group demographics. And sometimes I'll start out with the first hour, do the package by the hour price, and then switch to consumption for the second and or third hour of the event, because they come in, they grab a cocktail, they get distracted, they get in it. So in the first hour they tend to drink more, and then they kind of settle in, especially if they're sitting down to something. And so that's one thing. Another thing, when I have a client that's concerned about budget, and I'm sure you guys do this too, I'll suggest that they do beer and wine, because people don't knock back the beers and the wines as fast. Maybe a beer if they're really thirsty, but and it's cheaper. And then maybe do a signature cocktail, to have something kind of fun and alcohol, an alcoholic cocktail, then beer and wine. So that's another thing that I'll suggest if they're budget conscious.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, we really only do beer and wine, and maybe a signature cocktail for a very special event. But we're really trying to do a lot more of the non-alcoholic cocktails. And those can be really expensive, just as expensive as a cocktail. So it's been really hard to negotiate, budgeting for those, because people really like them a lot. I don't know about you, but my attendees are getting younger and younger, and they just don't drink as much.
Well, and the stat that I share is that 40% of them have never had a drop of alcohol before. So and we're only offering them water and soda otherwise, right? So why aren't, and then the discussion, Shannon, on some of those drinks, those non-alcoholic drinks are just as curated or more curated than just a bourbon and ginger, right? So it does come into play. And some of those, if they're using non-alcoholic brands like Ritual or Spiritless or whatever, those bottles cost the same as a bottle of Tito's.
Yep.
So that's why that price is up there as well. But there's lots of conversations on that for sure. But Julie, what about you?
Yep, very similar. I would say almost all of our bars, if we have any, is on consumption and not the per person package price. We found that we're more cost effective that way. And as less people are drinking, or people may be coming in later or skipping out on some of the evening functions, it seems to be more budget friendly for us to do on consumption. It varies on the type of meetings. More incentives are doing full bars, but more corporate meetings or association meetings are doing beer and wine. And we've had some with dinners where we're closing the bar like right after dinner service. Like if there's still a program, we keep the bar open until they've gotten through dinner, and then it's just coffee service for the rest of the evening, just to kind of save on that bar tab.
Another thing that I tried not too long ago was, to y'all's point, as far as the mocktails are as expensive, and some of them are super fun and interesting. And so what I did with the hotel was the signature drink was a mocktail, and then I think I paid an additional $2 if the person wanted to make it alcoholic and add vodka.
Oh,
so I just kind of, so that way it was only so they were happy because they could kind of mix the mocktail in batches and then add whatever else. And then someone was like, well, I really want mine to be an adult beverage. Then and so we did it that way.
Yeah. All right. So Amy, this popped in like 24 minutes ago. Amy F from on LinkedIn over here said, food and beverage takes most of my time as an event conference planner. I still can't believe there isn't a standardized labeling system. I bring my own labels and speak to the chef and label the buffets myself for our large conferences.
Wow.
And Amy, I am actually with you on that. The grid that I do, I go through and I code it myself, and then I send it to the chef and the CSM to approve and proof it. So, and even like one menu item I was proofing last week, and this one that I just did was a little challenging in getting all that done, but they had like panna cotta on the menu and it said vegetarian, and I changed that and said, you can't say that it's vegetarian because it contains gelatin. And the banquet server, who is the one making the labels, banquet captain making the label, well, I didn't know that, right? So it's kind of getting to that detail, and the fact that the hotel doesn't even realize that, it's so frustrating. Yeah. Okay, so ladies, we are at 48 minutes already. Holy moly. And I just noticed Amy just also said we often use the dessert for the break, and then we negotiate a better break rate. That's a good idea too. I want to do some rapid fire questions if that's okay with you all.
Sure.
Okay. What's your go-to snack during event setup?
Salty and crunchy.
Salty and crunchy. Okay.
Peanut butter M&Ms.
Good one.
Peanut butter pretzels.
Good one.
All righty. Mine's probably a gluten-free granola bar or something like that. Okay. One thing
You're the healthiest.
Doesn't mean that a gluten-free granola bar does not mean that it is healthy. It's still got lots of sugar in it. Could have lots of sugar in it. Okay. One thing you wish you could always splurge on for food and beverage.
Good wines.
Good wines. Okay.
That's a good one. I would say a really nice coffee bar with all the amenities.
Sushi at receptions for the group.
Okay. Do you have a lot of sushi eaters at your events?
And some of them a decent amount, yeah. And but I
Yeah,
can't.
okay.
It's
Right, yeah.
very expensive. And then when you do have it, they tend to eat a ton of it. So they'll like pile up their plates. So then
Right.
you always have to have it attended anyway.
Okay, what's your this was in my main questions that I sent you. What's the biggest pet peeve when reviewing a menu proposal?
Add-on price for coffee at a breakfast on a breakfast package, like not including it.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me on menus, related to food is just a couple things more options and items that are served with it's the best way to describe, like that are hard for restrictions or allergies or dietary preferences, meaning lots of cream sauces or
Mm-hmm.
Spices. Even though, like, I'm in the Southwest, I'm in Arizona, and it tends to be spice heavy, but it doesn't have to be. There's so many other foods here that's still Southwest that I don't think are listed there. So again, I think it comes down to a little bit of cost and creativity from the culinary side, but
Mm-hmm.
Having items where it's like, oh, they're, we want to modify that. I think there are more friendlier ingredients that majority of the population can have, sauces with citrus versus dairy, cream sauce, that type of stuff, or avoid, peppers as a garnish for everything, or that type of stuff, where it's like trying to, because then again, it comes down to timing and us taking the time to then dissect the menu, change it to accommodate the majority of the people or food allergies.
Yeah. Shannon, did you say one?
I would say lack of creativity and having menus that don't have maybe anything gluten-free or vegetarian on the menu, or just have one option.
I want to bang my head on the wall about that. I mean, every single day, because it's like, why do you only have one vegan option? I'm here for 3 days, and these are the exact same appetizers I'm supposed to serve for three different receptions or lunches, and things like that. It boggles my mind. Okay, so Alvin over here on LinkedIn just popped in here and said sushi is very popular. Alvin Valencia. And then he also said his pet peeve is push button coffee machines. Oh my gosh, I haven't seen one of those at an event. Really?
Yes. I've had that, and I agree. I would rather have the drip coffee. I have seen the Nespresso or the Keurig machine be put as the coffee station, and that drives me crazy. So thank you.
Wow.
Okay, now I'm
yes.
Processing that. Okay. Yeah. I've not seen that. Thankfully.
Okay, that's going to take a lot longer than just having the urn. Yeah.
I filling the water.
Where I've seen it was like smaller meetings, breakout. Like we had a board meeting before the regular meeting, and we had coffee, and the Nespresso machine came out. I thought, what is this? So, and I've seen it as small, as large of a small group for like 40 people.
Yeah, no.
We're talking, I'm not going to say the particular hotel, but 2 brands, Fairmont and Four Seasons. I was shocked. Fairmont and Four Seasons, and I thought I would rather have them brewed coffee in the urn than the push button.
# lazy.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Or lack of staff. That may be that first thing of it. Okay. Signature dish you love seeing on a menu or would love to see on a menu.
Ooh. Signature dish. That was a tough one.
It depends on where you are in the country and the world.
Right.
I agree. It really depends on where you're at.
So,
okay.
But I would say on a meeting break, and this isn't a signature dish, this is something that I just love, and is make your own trail mix.
Okay.
Make your own trail mix is the best break, and then you can customize it and use regional, like Chukar cherries in Seattle, dried Chukar cherries, and then. But I love when they've already got that, and they're not like, "What? I have to create this."
Right.
I mean, I definitely love where menus have items that are indicative of their location. A taste of their local flair. I think is always appealing, especially when you've got meetings that kind of move locations year to year or throughout the year, is you want to kind of have something that's in their backyard.
Yeah, no, I love that too. Okay, last question. What is the most overused item on event menus right now?
So I'm the opposite of Janet. I feel like nuts are way too common on event menus and they terrify me. So every time I see nuts on a menu, I get a little like, ooh, I want to stay away from that. So I feel like, I guess because I'm scared of them, I see them everywhere. But I generally just don't order anything with nuts.
Okay. Awesome.
For a while, it was cheeks, when the beef cheeks and the pork cheeks and all the cheeks were hot. I don't think of anything being overused, but I felt like that was like, a big player on restaurant menus and banquet menus, and then it faded. But
I feel like avocado toast is everywhere now, which is like 3 years past the zeitgeist. So
people still love it, and it can be so creatively done. I don't mind the avocado toast, but I hear you.
Yeah.
Well, over making it too. I mean, I did one, this was in 2022, and they did a gluten-free bar with, gluten-free thing, but they had 3 bowls of guacamole of avocado, like this big for just the gluten-free thing. I'm like, we only have like 10 people that are gluten-free. Why are you and then 3 bowls on the, you don't, that was food waste management or food waste big time. All right, Julie, what about that question?
Well, a little spin on that is one thing I wanted to add is, and this was a discussion with a couple planners recently, is one wish I had for culinary was either a separate or a standardized menu that you could provide for staff meals if you have a large staff.
Okay.
I know a lot of us tend to piggyback on it, or if I would love to myself create something where I can say, here's what I love to do for the staff, because it's something quick, it's something easy, it's something that's a little bit less than the standard menus. And I think it's something that, that they would eat either on the run or keeps them fueled and going, is something for a staff. Kind of like, in perspective, when you go to a kids menu, when you see a kids menu at different restaurants, we all know it's always got the burger, it's always got the chicken tenders, it's always got spaghetti. It'd be nice for maybe a one page, similar to like a page of vegetarian, vegan items, for your staff, because staff meals can get expensive.
Oh yeah. I negotiated the menus at some of these hotels, the lunch starts at $82 a person plus. Yeah. And I've, kind of on some of the notes, Shannon, you said, take that salad and put that on a break. I love that idea, but I'm like, okay, no, I want to cut a protein and I'm only want to pay $50. So what can you do for $50 for our staff meals? Right. Because it's just, that's feeding a lot of people. I mean, you're feeding 1,200 otherwise, right? But still feeding 50 people, 20 people, for your staff meals, that adds up over the course of 7 days. Yeah.
Another thing that I find in a lot of our contracts that we negotiate is that the group meals are complimentary for staff up to 12 people, and we have a 30% discount on thereafter or something. So, and that is helpful as well. Can be helpful.
Yeah.
You can't always get that with a smaller event. That's our, the big one.
Right. Yeah.
So much revenue.
Right. Yeah, and I negotiate the price of sodas and bottled water down to $5 and coffee down to $100. So
do you find that's usually you're usually successful in that, Tracy?
My clients have been, yep,
Okay.
in getting it down, at least not the $160 or $200 a gallon, right? I'm like, it doesn't cost you that much, right? So. Or I'm going to cut it all together, right? Like Shannon, I like that you cut it for the afternoon. Well, there's lots of nuggets of information in this email, in this blog, in this podcast, not blog, email, whatever it is. But I thank you so much for joining me today. And I think people have learned a lot. Alvin, thank you for joining us. Amy F., for joining us as well. And then Keith and Adia and Marie on Instagram. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. But the knowledge of these certified meeting professionals that you're talking here is is elaborate. And if you want to reach out to each one of them, let's see, you can reach out to Julia. She's Julie Wong, CMP on LinkedIn. Janet is Janet Hopperstein on LinkedIn. I said Stein earlier. Is it Steen or Stein?
Hoppenstein.
Hoppenstein. Okay. And then Shannon Ryan is Shannon Ryan, CMP on LinkedIn. So please reach out to all of them if you have any questions, as well as me. And actually, we have one more comment in here. This, I think it is from Alvin. Do you negotiate for FOC for number of passengers times number of passengers?
What's FOC?
Alvin, what's FOC? Front of, can you pipe that in, reply to your own note on there, what FOC is?
I'm not familiar.
Have you guys heard that term?
I have
No.
not.
I have not.
Okay. Alvin, put that in the comments and we'll respond to you on your comments, okay? Because none of us know what that term is. Oh, he just said thanks to all of us for chiming in. But we will get back to you on that, Alvin. Thank you for tuning in. And ladies, until next time, and everyone else, until next time, stay safe and eat well. Oh, free of charge. Yeah. Yes, free of charge for a number of people. Yes, kind of negotiate that for the staff meals, etc.
Oh, yeah.
So, okay. Sounds good. All right, ladies, stay with me for 1 second when we close down here. But everybody, until next time, stay safe and eat well. And thank you for tuning in. Where's my end stream? There we go.